Hello everyone. So I recently made a tier list covering all the legendary Melomon in the game, and now I'm going to make a tier list about the epics and rares in the game. Now I want to say that contrary to what most people might think, there are in fact some rares and epics that are completely worth considering, even alongside the legendary Melomon that exist. So it's not just filler Melomon. A lot of them are, don't get me wrong, but there are some standout Melomon that are worth considering, even if you have certain Melomon, including legendaries, already unlocked. So definitely stick around and find out which of these Melomon are worth considering. Before we jump into this though, I want to say one thing that I've seen that I want to correct. I've seen a lot of comments of people saying, "Oh, I'm a free-to-play player. Why are you showing me legendary Melomon? Just show me epics and rares because that's all I'm gonna have access to." And I just want to correct that notion that even if you're a free-to-play player, you're gonna get access to legendary Melomon. It's just a matter of time and your RNG. Like, there's people who are free-to-play players who got Demon Hound on their first summons. You know what I mean? Like, they're I just want to correct this concept that I've been seeing people saying that, oh, I'm just gonna run Epic Melomon forever and ever. There's if you play your cards right, if you've watched my guide to spending and how to spend your Stellar right and all this, you will see that if you play your cards right, if you save your resources and use them appropriately, you will get your legendaries. Okay, so don't sit there and say, oh, I'm only gonna look at the epics and rares because I'm never gonna get a legendary. You will get your legendaries, so just be patient. And if you don't have any yet, then hopefully this tier list will help you decide which of the epics and rares you can run in the meantime until you get something better, something legendary, etc. So let's start off and jump right into this. I'm going to pull the tier list up quickly so you can see it. So here's the tier list, and we're going to start with the rares. Now I will say the majority of the rares unfortunately are not that great. And we will be starting off with Spiked Boar. So I will be running relatively quickly through some of the rares. We'll still look at all of their skills in game as well, just so you understand why it is that they're passed. But basically, I will swap back into game here momentarily, and let's take a look. So Spiked Boar, you can see here, increased core skill damage by 20%, and their special skill, their special skill Together Evermore, just is an additional 1 energy per second regeneration. So as far as Melomon go, this is not particularly exciting. And if you look through a lot of these rare abilities, most of them are bad. And to be honest with you, to save a little time, I'm not going to individually process all the rares except for the ones that I think are worth considering. So I will jump back into the tier list and we'll go through rather quickly, with one exception actually. So let's see what that exception is. So Spiked Boar, unfortunately you are destined for D. We have our D tier, which is mostly going to be populated by rares. Next up we have Thunder Porpoise. Again, the special skill and main skill Awakening skill do not offer anything that you would consider running over 90% of epics. So another D tier. Like I said, I'm breezing through the rares until we get to one that's worth considering, because they're just really not viable, and there's no reason you would ever run a main rare Melomon, because you're guaranteed an epic on every 10x, if I'm not mistaken. I'll make sure I've not just given misinformation. Yes, do a 10x, get a guaranteed epic. So you're almost certainly going to at least have an epic Melomon with which you will be playing. So next up we have the Swiftbird again. Like I don't even feel like it's worth me mentioning that this just increases your attack speed a little bit. There's not really any situation you would run this over like some of the epic Melomon that we'll get to that increase actual overall damage output, as opposed to like a specific stat boost like haste or attack speed. What you will find is most of the rares do increase just like one stat, so haste plus mastery, etc. Now, there are of course always exceptions to every rule. So let's take a look at that. So the first exception we have to the rares is Cicinum, I suppose is how you would say this. And not because of their awakening skill. Their awakening skill sucks. It's just more determination. You will never run this over the other awakening skills. But Cleanse. So their special skill, Cleanse, is actually one of the best in slot skills for tank. Now, this may surprise you and think, really, this is best? The reason is because there are actually a surprising limited number of defensive Melomon for tanks. And one of the main considered Melomon to run on a tank, not as your main 2 slots, mind you, but eventually we'll have 3 special skill slots unlocked in the game, as you can see here. Once we get to Evolving, level 10, the special skill here, Cleanse, is one of the ones you consider. So cleanse the debuff of your character every 60 seconds, which at max level is every 46 seconds. So it's just a nice bonus to have. Maybe your healer misses a cleanse and, you have it available as like an emergency cleanse in case of an emergency situation. It's better than nothing. I'll put it this way. It's better than nothing. Some tanks will consider running cleanse in some fights that have lots of debuffs going out. And it's honestly the only usable rare special skill that you would actually consider running alongside epics or legendary Melomon. So Cleanse, for tanks specifically, can be considered as a 3rd slot pet if you're looking for pure defense. Some tanks might say, oh, well, I'll put 2 defensive and then I'll put like an attacking Melomon there instead, but you can absolutely run Cleanse. Not as your main 2, I wouldn't recommend that. There are better ones I would suggest, which we'll get to, but Cleanse, simply by virtue of having some use and being considered one of the better Melomon for tanks, is going to end up, believe it or not, in the B tier. That's right, we have a rare Melomon in the B tier by virtue of having a special skill that is generally considered one of the viable best in slot for tanks. So amazing. Against all odds, we have a rare in a higher tier than D. So that's what I'm saying. You can never discount everything. So next up we have Dornick again. I don't even have to show the skills. When dealing basic damage, 50% chance to trigger an additional attack. Not that exciting. You'd never use this over the epics. So again, this is going to the D tier. Then we have Sparkling Dino. Again, special skills aren't that exciting. Offensive boost. What does this really do? It's a 1% attack boost. Again, there's so many better epics. You're not going to ever need a 1% attack boost compared to the other ones that you can get. Then we have Flame Drake, and again, Flame Drake just isn't up to scratch. You reduce your core skill energy cost by 1%. So again, very limited use. So we run this here. Now, we have gotten through rares, and now we get into epics. And this is where it gets interesting, because this is where you're actually going to find there are some epics that are best in slot, even above legendaries for certain specs. That's right, you heard me right. There are legendaries that are considered more best in slot than legendary counterparts. And those best in slots are primarily for tanks. There is a surprising lack of tank special skills in legendary Melomon. So as a result, tanks are mostly going to run epics. So starting off, let's take a look at Okaka. Yes, that is the name of this Melomon. I'm not making it up. So, Okaka, again, the awakening skill you could care less about. This is very weak compared to other awakening skills. We're not going to factor this into rating the Melomon. However, their special skill, Defense Enhancement, increase the defense provided by the Melon by 5%. So as you increase this goes up to 23%. This is a nice defense boost for you as a tank. So if you are a tank, then you can actually get this defense boost. Very nice to have as a special skill to increase your defense. So this is actually one of the main Melomon that most tank guides will consider you should run. So you run this one plus 1 or 2 others, which we will get you from the epics, instead of running the very damage focused special skills of the legendaries. Very damage and healing focused, I should say. A surprising lack of defensive legendary special skills. So with that in mind, by virtue of it being one of the best in slot special skills for tanks, this Okaka is going to be an A tier because of the fact that their special skill is considered a best in slot. Now, next up we have the Forest Cat. So let's quickly jump back in the game and take a look at the Forest Cat and see what they have to offer. So first off, their Awakening skill. Tactical skill damage increased by 40%. It's okay. If you're just starting out and you don't have any other, like you just did a 10x draw and you have nothing else to put on, you could in theory run this as your main Melomon. You would deal more tactical damage. It's okay. It's not going to cause it to rank highly, but if you wanted to equip this when you were waiting to pull your Demon Hound as a damage dealer, this could work quite okay. Not going to benefit a healer, of course, because skill damage doesn't increase healing. If you see damage, it only affects damage. And then we'll look at attribute enhancement. Increase nature and physical damage by 1.5%. Again, this is okay if you have a class that uses this specific element of damage. If you don't have anything else to run, you could in theory run this. It's very niche and probably would not compare to any legendaries, but again, if you're just starting out, and a lot of this advice will be if you're just starting out, you could in theory run this because of the specific element damage. And again, anytime you see damage, that increase is quite nice compared to other forms of stat increases. So let's hop back to the tier list, and by virtue of the fact that it's okay, it's not totally useless, you might use it occasionally, it's going to get bumped up into C tier, but you're not going to really consider it in any real scenario because you'll probably find something better pretty easily. So next up in the list, we have the Spotted Pig. Now, let's jump back in the game and take a look at Mr. Spotted Pig here. So, Spotted Pig. Awakening skill, Piggy Charge. When dealing tactical skill damage, is 16% to deal an additional attack as true damage. Again, this is not that interesting. I would, in fact, completely skip this because this is just not going to scale anywhere near increasing damage of your actual skills. So damage increase to your skills is always going to outscale dealing an additional attack of true damage, unless it's something ridiculous like 70,000% or something, in which case, yeah, it would be pretty cracked. But for this type of skill, this is just passable. Not that interesting, nothing to see there. Piggy Charge up, let's take a look. Before defeating the current target in each battle, increase damage by 2%. Very mediocre. You're just getting a small damage increase until you defeat the current target. Very, very just a mediocre Melomon, not worth anything. And unfortunately, this means that we're going to have an epic joining the rares in D tier. There is just no scenario where you would ever run this Melomon. It is not very good, unfortunately. Next up, we have the Snowman, and I want to point out quickly before we get further along in the video, because you may be confused if you're saying, hey, where's this from? Where's this Melomon from, this Snowman? Where's the Dune Cat from? You know, where's this Black Hole Drake from? And I will show you quickly in-game for those who maybe have not noticed this. I will quickly show you that you can actually acquire these Melomon, not from summoning Melody Summons, but from Firth's store. That's right. You have the Black Hole Drake, Snowman, Dune Cat, here, and I believe, wait, is the Blue Iris? Let me just double check. I think Blue Iris is normally, yeah, okay. So the Blue Iris is normally in these summons here, but the Black Hole Drake, Snowman, and Dune Cat are only available here using these Mellow Bells. So you get these when you convert duplicate Melomons that you have when you're already maxed of that Melomon, and then you can acquire the Black Hole Drake, Snowman, and Dune Cat. Now, this means that you won't necessarily have access to these until you've gotten enough copies of either a, rare, epic, or legendary Melomon, such that you can start getting these bells from it. So this you would probably take some time to unlock if you're just starting off, but at least you know where you can acquire these 3 Melomon from. Now, going back, let's take a look at Snowman. So in their skill list here we have increase all damage by 30%, and then reduce all damage by 10% after awakening ends, lasting until the next awakening. So this is an interesting one because this is basically like a pure burst mode ability. So during your awakening, you're going to deal 30% more damage, but outside of your awakening, you're going to deal 10% less damage. So it kind of sucks. I'll be honest. This is like, oh, unless you're, maybe arguably a Darkblade who doesn't have any other legendary Melomon could run this because almost all of your burst is inside of the your tactical skills. But again, it's not that exciting. So let's look at their special skill, Borrowed Power, and see. Borrowed Power. Increase attack 2%, but it prolonged the awakening charge by 10%. Yeah, no, that's just not very good, unfortunately. It's basically supercharging the awakening, but at the cost of severely reducing your damage outside of awakening, and that actually hurts you more than helps you. So unfortunately, Snowman is going to end up in D tier. In fact, we're going to put it at the bottom of D, not at the bottom, but it's going to be just below this pig here. So not very good, unfortunately, and hurts you more than helps you by reducing your damage outside of awakening. Now, next up we have the Dune Cat. Let's take a look at their special skills and awakening skill in game. So, awakening skill, recover additional 25 energy per second. Next to useless. Not worth running as your main Melomon, not worth considering. However, let's take a look at their special skill, which already has spoiled itself by the name. HP Recovery. Recovers 0.5% HP every 10 seconds. Now, we have already established that the rare special skill Cleanse can be ran by tanks for their third skill slot. And this is another contender. You have this passive HP recovery every 10 seconds. Again, it's not necessarily that impactful. But if you're looking for 3 defensive abilities, this is a contender you could run in the third slot as a third defensive ability until they add better ones in the future, maybe with Generation 2 Melomon and so on. So yeah, it is it's okay. Like, I would consider running this as a tank if I have the third slot unlocked. I could put the HP recovery in there. In fact, I'd probably run this more often than I'd run Cleanse. You'd have your 2 defensive Melomon, one of which we've seen, which is the defense increase Okaka, one of them which we haven't seen yet. And then this one, HP Recovery. I think this could be a very nice tank third skill. So with that in mind, let's hop back here. And because this actually has a usable special skill that could be considered as a main equipped special skill for a tank, I'm going to put our Dune Cat into B tier, right next to Cleanse. So this is definitely a contender for one of the better defensive third ability special skills for tanks. So these 2 in B tier are both tank focused. A is also tank focused. In fact, you'll see a lot of these are best in slot for tank and less so for DPS. Now, moving on, we now have Darknim. Let's jump back into game and take a look at Darknim. Now, let's look at their awakening skill first. Absolute crit, increased crit rate by 25%. I wouldn't consider this that good because, generally speaking, you want to find special skills that increase damage. So let's look at their special skill. Light and Shadow. Increase Shadow and Divine damage by 2%. Again, similar to one of the cats we saw earlier, which increased nature and physical damage. This at least has limited usage. If you don't have a better damaging Melomon, a special skill in the early game, for example, and you are using Shadow or Divine damage as your primary element for your class, you could consider running Light and Shadow. So at least it has some use. Again, quite limited, not comparable to any legendaries, but not completely useless. So we're gonna end up placing them in C tier. So they're not D, not totally useless. You could increase your damage with it, but it's just not worth writing home about. So next up we have the Black Hole Drake, which is one of those Melomon again that you can acquire from Firth's store only and is not in the general Melody summons. So let's hop back in the game again and take a look at what this Melomon has on offer. So Black Hole Drake, increase attack by 25%. It's alright, but not that good. We would be looking for pet main awakenings that Melomon main awakenings that increase damage, not attack or a single stat. And then Deep in the Black Hole, their special skill. Whoops. Deep in the Black Hole. Increase the attack provided by the melon by 4%. Again, not that exciting for us. We're not really interested in an attack. We're mostly looking for damage. So it's just not that great of a melon one, unfortunately. Not the worst in the world, not the best in the world. But would you really ever realistically run it? Not really, no. So I would just place it at the top of D here because it's just not that viable compared to other much better Melomon. So next up we have the Radiant Porpoise. Now, let's jump into game again and take a look at this one. So, Radiant Porpoise. Their Awakening skill, when dealing passive skill damage 12% to a deadly addition attack, we've already established that these don't scale well and just aren't that great of a type of skill, so not that great. And then more fun as you fight. After defeating the current target in each battle, increase your damage by 2%. It's not that good of a skill, honestly. It's just not that good. It's so limited to like some very rare AoE instances, and it's not even that much of a damage increase. Overall, this is a pass of a Melomon. So it's just not that exciting, not that great. We're going to hop back into the tier list, and we're going to place them into D tier because there's realistically not really any scenario you would run them. Next up, we have the Blue Iris, and unfortunately, we're probably going to end up giving it the same treatment. High speed chanting, again, increases a single stat, not damage, not that interesting. Mastery, Storm Infusion, let's take a look. It recovers 14 energy every 10 seconds. Again, compared to increasing damage, it's almost entirely negligible. So we're going to hop back into the tier list and just place that into D tier. Sorry to say. Now, these two event Melomon, I'm just going to skip through here and do this. Now, both of these, we're going to hop in a game and look at them together just because they are both part of the same event. They're okay. They're not exciting. They're not terrific. They're just okay. Increase all damage by 18%. So that's pretty good, you know. If you had to run just a single Melomon Awakening, if you don't have any legendaries yet, you could in theory run this. It'd be quite okay to run because you can get free dupes from the event if you play during the event time. And then let's look at the Maltese. Again, increase all damage by 18%. So if you have two people running these two effects, then it would increase the damage effect by a few percentage. So again, this is okay. It's not tremendously exciting, but it's better than others. So it would be in C tier. You could consider running this until you get something better. And their special skills, Naughty Puppy and Full Puppy. In main story, increase allies attack by 11%. And in main story, give you an HP regen of 3.3% every 5 seconds. So pretty good. It's okay. As far as epics go, it's obviously, you can tell, more usable than some of the other epics. So that's why I put them here. In fact, I'll just move them to the top of C tier because they're actually pretty good. And there are some limited instances where if you don't have any legendary Melomon, you could consider running these to boost your damage output until you get something better, especially since you get all those dupes from the event. So quite interesting, but again, not the most exciting thing on the planet, just pretty good. So next up we have Polar Shadow, and now let's hop back into game and take a look at that one. So let's look at their Awakening skill. Increase all damage by 15% and immediately reduce the cooldown of all tactical skills by 10 seconds. So far, of all the epic Melomon we've had a look at, this is the best one we've seen that you could consider running until you get a legendary. So from a perspective of everything we've seen until now, this is pretty good for an epic. Increase all your damage, and you also get a reduction of your cooldowns to your tactical skills, so they're available right at the start of... They're mostly going to be available right at the start of your Awakening skill, so very nice little skill here. For an epic, that is. And then we look at Ice Shadow's Blessing. What happens here? Oh, increase HP provided by 4%. So you guessed it, we have the second best in slot tank Melomon here, which is recommended by everyone for the tank spec. We had the Okako, which increases defense. Now we have Ice Shadow Blessing, which increases HP up to 22%. Very nice, well, from the Melomon, yeah. Very nice defensive ability here for tanks, and the second best in slot that you would run even now in the game if you're a main tank with legendaries stacked up. You would still run this as your main defensive Melomon alongside the defensive one. So here we have another best in slot, which is an epic. Amazing. Who would have thought? And as a result of that, we have yet another Melomon who will end up in the A tier. We have two best in slot defensive abilities here, both very, very good for tanks, considered the best you would run in your defensive loadout. And now we have two Melomon left, and we have the Wood Spirit up now. So let's hop back into game and take a look at the Wood Spirit. So let's look at their Awakening skill. When dealing damage, 50% chance to splash. Okay, not bad, nothing exciting. We already established that we've got a better Melomon skill we just looked at with the Polar. Increase Fire, Thunder, and Ice damage by 2%. Now, like the other specific damage elemental increases, if you're using this as your main class spec, you could in theory run this until you get something better, but again, it's not the most exciting thing. You know, you would arguably be able to run this as your third Melomon or second Melomon until you get something better, so at least it has some limited use cases if your class uses one of these elements as its main ability, as its main element. So with that in mind, we're going to simply put this again in the C tier, right here, just below the two Maltese collaborations. Now, as they say, we are in fact leaving the, spoiler alert, best for last. And we're ending with Wraith. Wraith is the best epic Melomon in the game, by far. And let's see why. So, first off, let's look at their Awakening skill. Increase damage against bosses by 50% and reduce all damage by 15%. So this is an interesting ability because you'll increase your damage against bosses by 50%, but all other damage is reduced. So this is a boss killing Awakening skill and actually is quite nice. A 50% damage increase will help you nicely. Until you get a legendary Melomon like Demon Hound, you could theoretically run this quite nicely against bosses and do quite a lot more damage. So this is a very viable Awakening skill as an epic until you get something better. Now, that's not the best part of this Melomon. It is this skill here, Reappear. And let's click on this and see why that is. When taking fatal damage, immediately complete Awakening charge and become immune to all damage and die after 23 seconds. Now this is the max level. When it is at base level, it is only 5 seconds, but with these dupes you upgrade it and it's 23 seconds of basically a last stand. So when you die, you get 23 seconds last stand, and after this effect expires, your character then dies. So this is such a good ability because this allows you to basically live longer after you die and potentially survive long enough to, clear a hard fight. If you die near the end, you just make it through. But this is basically going to be run mostly by tanks. If you don't want to run the Turning Point talent, which also has a similar effect, by the way, I will say the Turning Point talent and this pet do not stack their effects. The pet Reappear ability will take priority and cancel out the Turning Point. So you will die after 23 seconds, even if you have Turning Point and Reappear at the same time. So do keep that in mind. But even with that said, this is a very, very, very powerful skill and definitely one of the best tanking skills in the game. So with that in mind, this is our S tier, our lone S tier epic for having a very good boss killing Awakening skill and a very good extra life last stand secondary skill. So there you have it. That's the complete epic and rare tier list. Hopefully you found this helpful. There are a few useful epics and rares in the game. It's not all 100% legendary dominated. And again, like I said earlier in the video, if you are a free-to-play player, Don't sit there and say to yourself, oh, I'm only going to consider epics because I'm a free-to-play player. The legendaries are accessible. You will get them. You just have to keep playing, farming your materials, doing your dailies, collecting your stellarite, doing all your events, and eventually you will also get your legendaries and dupes of them too. So just keep sticking along and forging along and farming, and you will get what you want. So that's a wrap. Hope you found the video helpful. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you know when the next video is uploaded. Join the Discord if you haven't already. The link is in the description down below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.